He's one half of a team of famous filmmakers in the West. He's the author of several books on cooking, the owner of a restaurant in New York. He's charming, he's pushing, but there's still a lot more to him, as you'll soon discover when you meet Ismail Merchant. Welcome to the program, Ismail.
Thank you.
They said you were a gift from God when you were born, but can you recall why?
Well, I had three sisters, who were born before me, and my parents were very keen to have a son, and they went to Ajmer, because that's our main Sufi saint for family, and she tied the nara, a ribbon, around the silver door and asked for me. So the fourth child was a son.
And hence a gift from God.
Looks like it.
Tell me, what sort of family was it that you were born into? I know they were merchants, weren't they?
Well, my father was a textile merchant, and my mother came from Gujarat. He came from the north, my great-grandfather, and settled in Surat first and then came to Bombay. And he started to deal with imported textiles, particularly cotton from Manchester. And then he distributed the bales to the local shopkeepers. So that's what was the background, and I grew up with that background. And he was also a gambler. He went to the races every Saturday in Bombay. And when he would come home with a pocket full of money, we would be very happy. But when we could see his face, not so happy, we knew. So we'd take a blanket and curl and go to sleep.
So there were many days when Daddy had gambled away the family income and there was nothing to eat.
Absolutely. It was amazing. I know that once my mother said that, well, here's the jewelry of the family, and if you want it, it's available to you. And he was just completely taken aback because, this offer, to go and gamble, it's just an amazing thing. So you saw that in the family, and we were just little kids at the time.
So in a sense, taking risks and gambling, and in a sense, many people think of filmmaking as gambling, has been in the family blood, hasn't it?
Absolutely, because I think you saw that apart from playing safe, like many people do, businesses, have their ups and downs. But gambling, with particularly horses, was something completely different. So it was there,
Now, before you went on to become the cosmopolitan and very international personality that we know you to be today, your schooling actually began in a very traditional Urdu academy.
It did. I went to a school, Anjuman Islam High School. At home, I studied Arabic and Urdu. And then I went to St. Joseph High School for a bit, and then went to St. Xavier's College.
So all the traditional Islamic disciplines were, in a sense, ingrained in you as a child?
Absolutely. My father prayed 5 times a day, and we kept Ramzan, the 30 days, and we would all go as young kids, to have special prayers at night, in the mosque. So we looked forward to things, like it was always festivities, traditional, like Eid celebration. All of that was really a part of my upbringing.
But it was, I gather, when you went on to college at St. Xavier's in Bombay, that your talents as an impresario first began to blossom. You were a pretty special sort of college student, weren't you?
Well, yes. There was an organization called Sangeet Mandal. I was the secretary for 3 years. And we introduced, like Oscar Awards, we introduced the awards in college, college competition for singing, music, dance.
And this was your idea?
This was my idea. And every year, at the end of the year, we would give these awards to the exceptionally talented students. So it became very popular. And then at the final year, we wanted to do it in the quadrangle of the college, which was never given to a society like Sangeet Mandal, because there were many societies in the college. College day was reserved only for quadrangle performances. So I went to the principal, and then I told him that this is going to be something exceptional, and I want to do it in a big way and, raise money for the students and scholarships and things like that. So he said, well, but we don't allow this. And, being in a Jesuit father, so I walked with him and I talked to him and I talked to him. I wouldn't leave him, you see. He was going somewhere and I wouldn't leave him. And he said, that I'll tell you that you can sell snowballs to Eskimos. So you have the college quadrangle, but this is the only time.
And is that also how you financed your passage to New York University?
Yes, actually, I had very little money, and my father said, okay, I could give you so much money, and then the rest is yours, how you want to go. So all the students who had won the awards and, had done the musicals with me, raise the money by having a variety program.
So you were enterprising, if anything, from the word go.
Absolutely.
You've always known how to make money and make it easily and quickly.
Well, make money, yes, that was one of the part, but actually for good causes.
One of the things that actually took you to America, of course, was your desire to get away, to realize your ambitions in the West. But formally, you went to do an MBA. Was that actually an important part, or was that just the excuse?
Actually, my father wanted me to finish the studies. That was one of the main things. And I promised him that I would go and finish my master's. I'll get my master's. So New York was the place which I wanted to go to, because that was really the center from the point of view of business, cinema, distribution, advertising, public relations, everything. So I went to New York, and I'd seen it in the films, you know, in Hollywood films, what New York was like. So there was a kind of a, what you call it, an imaginary New York in my mind, you know. So I went to New York. I was very disappointed because I went to, you know, where Macy's was, Herald Square, and I rented a room there when I arrived, and I saw Horn and Hardart, where you had to put a coin to get the food, and all these bums were on the benches around, and I said, what a place I've come to. But immediately after that, you know, I just said, well, you know, will be an adventure of life, you know.
And it was. I mean, one of the things you had to do was earn money to keep yourself going, and you did it sometimes working in the United Nations, but sometimes you did it pretty fraudulently as well, didn't you?
Well, fraudulently not so. But working with the mission, that was the thing. Indian delegation came in September to December. So I got this temporary job, and the lady at the United Nations, a Brazilian lady, very attractive, and I just took a great fancy to her, and she took a great fancy to me, and she would announce me as a delegate from India as opposed to a messenger from India. And I would invite people to come to the delegates' dining room. And
something you weren't actually entitled to do.
I was not entitled to do, exactly. So I invited them, and they came, and I wanted to tell them about my ideas of filmmaking and what I wanted to do. So I got a company, Trident, interested in a project of mine, a story which is based on a mythological story, the creation of woman.
Which was in fact your first film.
Absolutely.
And you were only 24.
That's right.
And it was born in a United Nations dining room.
Absolutely, absolutely. The guy who directed the film, Charles Schwepp, I produced it. The guy who directed it, he was so taken by it because the dining room had an ambience and a very special place. And then he heard the stories about what I wanted to do or what I wanted to become, you know. And I had, I mean, you know, there's a kind of a devotion and a kind of passion which immediately sparked off his interest in supporting this project.
He was the first person to be taken in by the great Ismail merchant charm.
If you can call it taken in, a genuine charm.
But in fact, a lot of people were, because it went on to get an Oscar nomination. You were barely 24. That must have surprised you.
Well, not surprised. I wanted to be in Hollywood. You know, I wanted to go to the studios. So I sent a PR release, you know, which brought me a headline in the New York papers, that HEP visitor from India, you know. This was a headline. And even the president of the company, McCann Erickson, where I was working, he called me. I mean, normally presidents don't call a trainee, you know, to meet with them face to face. And he said that, Ismail Merchant, you know, where are you from and what it is, and, you know, who has given this press release out? So I said, well, my friend did for me. And he said, well, I admire this enormously. And this kind of a headline is very, even I as a president haven't received this kind of a headline.
Wonderful. It was about that time, too, that you met the man who became your business partner for the next 40 years, James Ivory. Do you remember that first meeting?
Well, actually, it was not at that time. It was after I returned from Hollywood. Now, that was a very interesting story, which I must tell you. I was in Hollywood trying to impress the Hollywood stars to work in a film with me. Now, I had never made a feature film in India, but I went as a Indian mogul producer, you know, and went to meet with Susan Hayward, John Gavin, and I mean, you just name it, Maureen O'Hara, all the stars, and I was being photographed with them, and those pictures, you know, became like what you call a calling card for me, that this visitor from India, you know. So I met a woman, a writer, at Isabel Leonard at MGM Commissary. I called her upon the recommendation of Agnes Moorehead, who was a very famous star there. So I went and saw her, and she said that, listen, you know, I don't know anything about India. How can I write a screenplay about India? But I have just read a wonderful book called The Householder by Ruth Parawar Jhabwal. you should do that into a film, or you should make it into a film. So I went, bought the book, I read it, and at that time I was also working as a salesman at a men's store to earn money, obviously, but I read the book and I said that this would be my first film, and I wrote it in my diary. I had never met James Ivory, I had never met Ruth Jabwala, so that's how really it started.
How did you
my
entice
passion.
James Ivory to come into this partnership with you?
Well, then I returned to New York. Now, I had met Madhur Jaffrey and Saeed Jaffrey in New York in 1959. And they recommended James Ivory because they had just worked with him. Saeed had worked with him on a film called The Sword and the Flute.
So
He was
Saeed,
the
in a sense,
narrator.
was the go-between that brought you
Saeed
together.
and Madhur, and he also narrated my film, The Creation of Woman.
Isn't this wonderful? So this amazing triumvirate of yourself, Ruth Jabwala, James Ivory, and two of your more famous actors, Saeed and Madhur, all came together at the very start.
Absolutely. It's amazing. The very first couple I met in New York when I visited New York was Saeed and Madhur Jaffrey. And that's how...
And the rest just followed slowly.
That's slowly...
But the amazing thing is, I gather you and James Ivory are very different people. You're as far apart as chalk and cheese.
Well, we are, like North and South Poles, you know. But, you know, the thing is that most interesting is that this partnership, which is so opposed, you know, like two opposing members of the same team. And that's really the exciting part of it. Because if it had been the same kind of temperament and feeling as I have, it would have never worked.
But did you ever think that you'd continue for 40 years, 44 films, 30 Oscar nominations?
Well, I think we knew, because, you know, after meeting Ruth, you know, convincing Ruth, because she pretended her to be her mother-in-law when we called from
That's why
Bombay.
she was scared when you called her the first time, wasn't she?
Absolutely. She didn't want to meet us. She pretended that, oh, well, you know, Mrs. Jabwala is not here, but I... So I said, well, we want to come and see and talk to you something about the householder. So we took a train from Bombay to Delhi. We went there. You know, I told you just now about the album which I had created with all the movie stars.
You took it with you?
I took it with me to impress her. But Ruth is, you know, she was not impressed
So in a
at all.
sense-
She was more interested in James Ivory's thoughts as opposed to be, you know, my thoughts.
But would you say that in a sense the real gel that kept it going was your personal conviction that it could happen, and that in a sense you were the real believer, they just fell in place with you?
Well, the talent, I must say, the talent of Ruth is unique and talent of Jim is unique. And we also share the same vision, you know, that we wanted to make good films. Now, there is a turning point here is that coming to New York, when I was a student, my whole philosophy of filmmaking changed after seeing Satyajit Ray's films and De Sica's film and Fellini and Bergman. So I wanted to do something which had some substance and story to it. That was in 1958. And then I met Ruth in 1961 with James Ivory, who also shared the same vision.
And as they say, the rest is history.
History.
Let's take a break there. I want to come back in part two and talk a little bit more about the special qualities that you brought to this amazing Merchant-Ivory relationship in terms of your charm, as they call it, and in terms of your ability to get things done. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stay with us. Welcome back. My guest is Ismail Merchant. Ismail, they say your greatest strength is your charm, that you can persuade anyone to part with anything, provided you want it badly enough. Do you accept that?
Yes, I think in a way it is right, because, you know, if you want something passionately and you want something which you believe in, then obviously you use every method to. I remember a story which I'll tell you. I was trying to raise money, and this guy turned me down. And this was again the second time I went to him, he turned me down. The third time I went, he turned me down. And the fourth time, he couldn't but notice me, you know, in a proper way as to what I was saying. And it's like an elephant swaying, you know, outside the door. You know, you have to notice him sometime or the other. And that's what happened. He became he became the investor in this film of mine.
And he did it because Ismail Merchant made himself someone difficult to ignore.
Absolutely. And persuasive. You know, like you, I mean, if someone turns you down, people become so upset about a turn down, you know, something you refuse to, you know.
Tell me about your persuasiveness, because you have great actors that you've had in your films, people like Paul Newman, Hugh Grant, Helena Bonham Carter, Anthony Hopkins, Jean Monroe, and yet all of them say, he hardly pays a pittance. So what do you do to persuade them to come?
Well, it's not quite the pittance. $1 million is not pittance, you know. But, I mean, a substantial amount of money which they demand from the producers, other producers, they would do, let's say, 50% or 40% from me.
So you're offering them a challenge which they can't resist.
Absolutely. And a good story and a good film. No actor in life, you know, doesn't want to, I mean, wants to to be remembered for the work they have done or contributed. And if you have a wonderful story and a character which is a challenge, I mean, look at Mr. and Mrs. Bridge with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. I mean, they were just brilliant in the film. She was nominated for Oscar. She got the award from the film critics in New York, and Paul Newman got the award in Italy as the best actor.
They also say of you that Ismail never buys a lunch if he can avoid it. Is that true?
That is not true at all.
You paid for many lunches in your time.
I absolutely. And Jennifer Kendall, Jennifer Kapoor, she always said the most generous person she has met is Ismail Merchant, apart from her husband, Shashi Kapoor. So,
okay. In the 80s, and even much more so in the 90s, you began directing films yourself, and yet you were never trained as a director. Was it a difficult transition?
Well, not really, because I've worked with Jim very closely. I mean, it's not only just being a producer who raises money or, distributes the films, but it was working with him in casting, script, location.
So you've learnt by being his associate?
Absolutely.
So in a sense, are you saying the credit of a movie that you've directed is actually Jim's, not yours?
Not 100%, but, pretty much so that he inspired me in many ways, like Ray inspired us.
Let me tell you why I asked that question, because many critics have turned around and said that movies that you've made, like The Proprietor or In Custody, have been brilliant, and you've been compared to James Ivory. Does that bring a strain in the relationship?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, he's very happy about it, because, what you call it, his disciple or someone who's learned from him can make a film.
Gurus aren't always happy with their disciples, are they? Particularly if the disciple's in danger of outshining the guru.
Not really. I mean, I would never outshine James Ivory. I know that. I can make as good a film, as
You're saying you know your place in comparison to him?
Absolutely.
Okay, your new venture, I gather, is The Mystic Messiah, a V.S. Naipaul book. How did you persuade that recluse author to give you the rights?
Oh, it took me 4 years, but I never gave up. I wrote to his agent first to get the rights to the novel, and he sort of made an excuse that, this is not the right moment and Naipaul doesn't want to, deal with this right now.
The normal stuff,
the novel, that's right. Then later on, I wrote another letter to the other agent in New York, and I got a reply that, maybe, this is not the right moment. So then I went back again to the agent in London, invited him for lunch. Now, I paid for the lunch, and a hefty amount of money too, in sterling, not rupees. So anyway, I took him to lunch, we talked about it, and he said, well, maybe let's see what I can do for you. And then, of course, the answer was negative. So I wrote a letter to, now Vidya Naipaul I had met many times, in Delhi and in London. And I wrote his letter to him. I said, well, listen, dear Vidya, I have done this film called In Custody, and I would like to show it to you so that you can get some feeling from what I can do, and I love your book, and So I wrote this letter. I get a reply back, Dear Ismail, thank you very much for your letter, but I know that your persuasive powers are legendary, and I would rather give you the book than have any further arguments with you. So he gave the rights to us.
Amazing. Tell me, you've done so much in the world of films, and yet at the same time you've written, 4 books on cookery, you have a restaurant in New York. Where do you get time for all of this?
Well, because, we have a foundation upstate New York, Merchant and Ivory Foundation, where we help people, young artists, designers or composers, photographers, sculptors, painters, writers, and we give them a small amount of money so that they get the, the initial push. So there I prepare feasts for people, and they come and eat, and I invent recipes, because that's one of the things which is very creative.
And then one day the entrepreneur and you said, let's put these recipes into a book and make a bit of money instead.
Well, money is not the issue here. If you were
But you put together 4 books.
4 books. But, the whole idea of money, let me tell you, right from the beginning of the company in 1961, we never thought of money, how we're going to finance a film. It was the creative talent that came together with Ruth Jabwala, James Ivory, Shashi Kapoor, and Jennifer Kendall and myself.
To be fair, the world has actually recognized that, in fact, this is one organization where creativity rather than finance comes first.
Absolutely.
But are you as a person ambitious? You drive yourself. Is there a goal, a target that you're seeking?
Well, I think, your goal is, doing something which is so challenged, that you're so challenged that you don't see anything beyond that. It's all a blinding challenge, that you don't see anything beyond that. And sometimes,
Are you driven as a person?
Well, I mean, there are angels behind me that drive me.
You take this bit about being a gift from God very seriously.
Very seriously.
Yeah? But you really feel that, in a sense, you have a chosen hand on your shoulder, pushing and guiding?
I believe that. I believe that very strongly. I think that there are people, and there are certain times, things that are beyond your control, and yet you are guided in a proper way, and I believe in that.
So there's a bigger faith than you that is actually guiding Ismail Merchant along.
Absolutely.
Tell me something. You never married. Why was that?
Well, I met somebody 30 years ago, and we were two, but I was not ready to commit myself. And now I see that she's married and has a child.
Do you regret the mistake you made?
I regret it, yes. But I still feel that there is those moments which we have spent together are quite unique.
Do you ever, at the age of 63, which is your age now, experience loneliness, or are you self-sufficient as a personality?
I'm self-sufficient as a personality. Loneliness doesn't occur to me at all. As you said earlier, books, the foundation, friends. I mean, I have loads of friends all over in India, in Europe, it's Paris and London and New York. So I have loads of friends.
Do you think there's a sense in which you're pushing yourself to fill your life with activity because you don't have this partner, that in a sense you were shy when you had a moment and now you lost it, and so you're filling yourself with everything else?
Well, not really. I have three partners, actually. Ruth Jabbal, James Ivory, and Richard Robbins, the composer.
So I'm right, work in a way has taken the place of a wife.
Well, you just have committed yourself to something so, what you call it, devotedly. Devotion is a very important thing.
And is it now too late to find a partner?
Not really. I don't see why should anything be late, as far as I'm concerned.
So there's always a possibility that even at this age, Ismail Merchant could end up getting married.
Absolutely.
Tell me, as you look back on your life, the little boy from Bombay has today got 4 houses all over the world, an enviable art collection, I've told, a huge reputation. When you look back on your life, do you do it with satisfaction and pride?
Well, I do it with great satisfaction, because who could be, there is you say that someone who's looking after you, someone up there likes me. You know that phrase, someone up there likes me? Well, so that has been really a great satisfaction for me. That I don't know, sometimes you may plan things and they don't happen, but yet they go in the right direction. So I think this is what satisfies me and gives me a great contentment.
And how much of that satisfaction comes from a sense of destiny, from a sense of luck, or from the knowledge that it's your own hard work that's behind it?
Well, hard work is very important. And I mean, even, I know that if you ask something from God, with great passion, He'll answer you and He'll speak to you. And I think that is really an important thing.
And at the end of it all, God remains important to Ismail Merchant.
Absolutely.
Ismail Merchant, for this wonderful interview. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.